All right, here we go. Welcome to my board of truth. Ooh. Credentials. We're going to talk about my credentials personally today because every person you listen to on the internet, you know something about them. You know their upbringing, their work experience, and of course, their education. So we're going to dive in generally to what my credentials are. And maybe we'll get a little deep here and there. I do have some paperwork to show you, but that's for later. So let's get going. Okay, so credentials. My first credentials are my upbringing. So I was born and raised in New England. So I am a Yankee, I guess is what they call it. I don't know. I have a little bit of a New England accent. Some people hear it, some people don't. It depends on where you're from. But I was around where they would talk about, like, you know, the first colonies of America. I definitely saw, you know, the old colonies set up where you would walk around and see how they used to live. I would get that on PBS and I would say, oh my God, this is talking about my town, things like that. And yeah, so there was history everywhere you look. Like the houses are from the 1800s. Everything is old. Mark Twain lived in Hartford. I still haven't gone to his house, but I would like to. So there was a lot of history baked in. And I actually ended up being raised by a boomer. And then I think a Gen X mom, I don't know. Xer. I am the youngest of 7 children. Okay, there we go. And I was raised also Christian and or Baptist, depending on how you look at it. I was also told we were non-denominational, but I was, in fact, baptized, okay? So I have a baptism certificate, which means I was dipped underneath water and brought back up to present to the world that I was dedicated to Christ, right? So I had already been a Christian by the time I was very young. First, some of my first thoughts was like accepting Christ into my heart. And then at the age of 14 in 2010, oh my God, actually September 19th is when I got baptized. Happy almost baptism birthday to me. We're about 9 days away from that, something like that. But yeah, so I was baptized in September 19th. I had been a Christian my whole life, and I dedicated my life to Christ, even more so in a public setting. And I talked about my Christianity and my love for Christ at 14 years old at my church in front of my parents and some of my family in my church community. So I consider myself to be raised more so Baptist. I spent 25 plus years going to church. That's right. Small churches of congregations of 25 people plus, and then I went to another congregation, this one, that was growing, and I got to experience having friends of all ages, and I went on missions trips with this church, and I also went on missions trips when I volunteered with a mega church. But anyway, so my missions, I went through 4 or 5 of them, all in like New York State area. I did a missions trip in Hartford, and then I also went to West Virginia to help people over there. So that is my credentials of my upbringing. Okay, lots of church involved, as we see. And the volunteer work. So this was with a mega church that had an awesome program and still does for kids in their adolescence to young adulthood. So what I would do is I was a leader of a group of girls that were all in 6th grade, and I followed them all the way through middle school and then all their 4 years of high school. So I was, in a sense, a leader, and I was also, instructor is not the right word. It was a lot less of that and a lot more of just spending time with the girls, going on missions trips with them, hanging out with them, making sure that they were growing in their faith at the same time I was. I prayed over a lot of girls. I considered myself to have an expertise in prayer, or like my spiritual gift. That's right. Whew, been so long since I talked about that. But yeah, my spiritual gift was prayer and community. So I used it to lead these girls. And I love it. I still, like, they all came to my wedding. You might be able to see a picture here, but I'll probably blank out all their faces. We'll see. And I'm so proud to have this as my base, specifically the volunteer work I did with these girls, because they mean the world to me. It taught me a lot about the human condition of adolescence and how important it is to raise up a generation of girls that feel seen, heard, loved, and safe. So that is my upbringing. Let's go on to the next one. All right, moving on, we have work. You better work. Anyways, so of course we start with babysitting. I wrote it down, and officially I have babysat, let's see, 10 kids consistently over the past 28 years. 10 kids I have watched from very young ages all the way up until the age of like 7 or 10 or possibly 12 even, more like 10 though. And 5 of them were boys, and 5 of them are girls. Okay. In between that, I also babysat at church. I also babysat independently random times for probably 1 through, I don't know, 10 moms. So you could say that I've spent a lot of time with kids. Okay. I've spent a lot of time with middle schoolers. What an experience. High schoolers, what a very different experience. And then children all the way from a couple weeks old until about 10 to 12 years old. So I have spent a lot of time with children. I would like to think that I'm a pretty good babysitter. And I have been told by my cousin, who is very small, that I am still like a kid. And I took it as a compliment. So thank you. Thank you, Nathaniel. Anyway, so yeah, babysitting, that was my first job. Now, this doesn't seem that important, right? You're like, yeah, that's everybody. But what I'm telling you right here is my credentials is being an average ass working person, okay? Which is not a lot of what these other people that are trying to tell you, I'm just like you, I know just what you're experiencing. They don't. Or they have been so far removed for so long that they can't empathize and understand our worldview anymore, or at least don't seem to be able to really truly understand. So this is me trying to tell you that I'm just like you, and I don't think this is out of the ordinary for a lot of people. Anyways, let's continue on. My first job, babysitting, being mother's helper, was at 11 years old. Okay, I was 11. And then I did not really want to continue babysitting, but none of these other jobs were available to me because I was not of age yet, right? You have to be 16 in the state of Connecticut at the time I was growing up to have a legal job. So at age 14, I went and worked at a local farm and was a farmhand for about 2 or 3 summers. Now I worked with my brother and my brother's friends and my friends. It was very exciting. I met a lot of different people there too. Maybe some of you are watching now. And that exposed me to people that were different from me really for the first time in a real tangible way outside of my church. So anyways, I was 14 at the time. I worked there until I was probably like, I'm gonna say 16, because at age 16, I then went on to work at a winery in my town. So at age 16, I was working in a winery. Now, while I was able to have a legal job at this point, I was, which by the way, there's like exceptions for farm workers because they need help, and I was paid less than a minimum wage for this, okay, babes? It was a hard ass job. It is by far the hardest job I have ever had. Babysitting kind of takes the cake in some aspects, but this is mentally a little easier, but physically the hardest job. And anyone that is out there being a farmer, God bless you. I could not do it anymore. But anyways, then I went to work at a winery. I was not allowed to be behind the bar, so I would do the quick checkout. And then once I turned 18, I was able to pour for people. Now, this was my favorite job, I think, growing up, because when you're working at a winery, listen, everybody's having a good time, okay? You got people drinking on the weekends. They're trying to get drunk or just hang out with their friends. Someone's on a date. Someone else is bringing their parent-in-laws around. Like, all this stuff is happening. It's a buzz of activity. And I'm in there pouring these drinks for people, talking and yapping about what it is, selling to them these wines that I had personally never had before. Basically, I worked there for about 2 to 3 summers, and I really loved it. I was in the public, so very special memories there. I love that crew still, and I think very fondly of that time. Then we move on to Home Depot. Now, there's a little break in between because I went to, over here, college. Hello. And at this time, I was still babysitting. Hey, whoa, oh. So I was babysitting at that time. So I was not working at Home Depot until after I got married. Or before I got married. So I would say I was 22, right? 22. I was 22 working at Home Depot. Now, at the time of my wedding, which I got married at 22 as well, it was 2019. So as you know, what happens after 2019? Well, 2020 happens and the fucking pandemic hits and the whole world shuts down. But not Home Depot. Home Depot stayed open because we were essential, okay? We were essential to everybody that was getting their income at home that they couldn't go to their jobs to, so they were doing all these work constructions. There was still construction going on for big companies, and we were one of the only places that was an actual shop that people could still walk into and kind of get away from their house and also grab supplies to go build something at home while they're going crazy. While everybody else was going crazy at home, me and my crew, you know who you are, we're going crazy at Home Depot, okay? And I could write a long, long book about the experiences I had there, but I will just put it at this. I stayed there for about 2.5 to 3 years. By 2022, I moved to Florida. Okay, the Sunshine State. So I'm no longer a New Englander. I now live in the Sunshine State of Florida. And I can tell you right now from seeing all the posts on Facebook of the local groups around my area, they don't like that I'm here, okay? Which is another episode we will get into about public transport and other lovely things in the future. But for right now, you gotta know that I am living the life in the Sunshine State, okay? I fucking hated it when I first got here. I love it now. That's something for another channel though. So anyways, I was at Home Depot, I guess, from age 22 until age 24.5, 25. Hello, everybody. How you doing? How was your weekend? Mine was great. Thanks for asking. I realized over the weekend, staring at this beautiful board of mine, that I actually forgot some work experience. So we're going to add that in now. Let's see here. Okay. So excuse my whiteboard. Oh, it's actually coming off quite nice. This was not the case the other day. Anyways, so the work experience I did not add is after moving to the Sunshine State of Florida, I ended up working as a barista. Woo, okay. Now, in this job was a very, very high stress job, and I was there for I think 1.5 years. And I ended up leaving on a day where I quite literally lost my keys. I threw them out. I almost ran into another car, which a cop saw, was right there. It was great. I loved it. And then I also lost my glasses. I'm pretty sure I threw them out also, but I could not find them at the time. So to say I was stressed was an understatement, all right? And I ended up leaving that job a few weeks later, but that's another story. But all this to say is that I understand if you have had a job that did not pay you a lot and was stressful, okay? I understand that life. Working as a farmhand, working with people during the pandemic, photography, literally everything I do involves people. The type of photography I do is portraits, weddings, and now I'm working with small business owners, things like that. But it all involves people, especially barista. Have you ever seen a barista in the morning during a breakfast rush? It's insane. It's insane. So in 2013, I believe it was, I was 16 years old. A friend of mine was getting remarried and asked me to photograph this wedding. So since then, I have decided that, or I decided at that time that I wanted to be a photographer, and I have pursued that ever since. Why I'm here, well, we'll get into that too. That's part of my education. So for now, all you need to know is that my upbringing, I was very religious, very Christian, very volunteer-centered. I would like to say very giving. Not to toot my own horn, but I don't know many people who would decide to volunteer for about 7+ years with the youth, okay? Not everybody's cup of tea, I understand, but I fucking love you guys. You're awesome. And then my work, you can tell that I was around people. I was in nature. I was doing hard work. I was really in the public. I was selling things. I was working at the hardest job time frame I've ever worked in. I will go in later about what a hellscape is Home Depot was at that time, because people were not very nice online during the pandemic, but they were also not very nice in person. But yeah, so I dealt with a lot of criticism at this time. I grew a skin, and I started to understand why people have the saying, I don't like people. It started to make a lot of sense at this time in my life, okay? So we did a lot of customer service, and then photography is just its own set of skills. If you have a business, if you're an entrepreneur, you know how hard it is to do this. So yeah, I'm still doing photography today. In a couple weeks, I will be shooting a very dear friend's wedding of mine, and I am fully equipped with my knowledge to create the best wedding photos that I think I will have ever created, and I'm really excited about that. And I guess that means too, ultimately, that I am an artist, okay? So because I am an artist, I do not fit in the world of like being a political figure, right? I didn't go to school, which we'll get into. I didn't go to school for anything related to debate, okay? And I didn't go to school to learn about the history of debate or the history of politics. I went for, well, we'll get into it. Education. So let's talk about it. I graduated in 2016, 15, something like that, with a high school diploma from my home because I was homeschooled from the age of 5 all the way up until the age of graduation. Okay, so I'm a high school graduate. I then went on to community college, and I did graduate with a certificate, okay, in marketing and sales and photography. And I have my education paper to prove it. Right here it says, May 30th, 2019, dear graduate, the faculty and staff of Northwestern Connecticut Community College join me in congratulating you on the occasion of your graduation. You are heartily commended on your achievement. We recognize that the path to a degree rarely is an easy one. We extend to you our wishes for continued success as you chart a new course for the future, and we hope that your future will be filled with lifelong learning. Congratulations, with pride in graduates, Michael A. Rook, the president. So, fancy little degree right here, okay? Now, basically, what certificates equal to in my life in education as a whole, right, a higher education, we would call what I have a associate's degree, okay? So that basically is about 2 years of study, and I did it within 3 years because I was babysitting the whole time, okay? I paid out of pocket. I was like a very average student, and I did not have the cojones, all right, to get like the biggest SAT score, to get any financial aid. So I paid all of my classes out of pocket with the help of my parents in the acts of like helping me with my car payments and then a couple books. But yeah, the majority of my community college experience was paid out of pocket by me through babysitting. Thank you to everybody who has paid me to babysit their kids, because I wouldn't have a college diploma without it. or I would have had to do another job that like was not as flexible. So I appreciate it. This might seem silly to a lot of people, but I think you'll understand as this series goes on. This is actually educational. I have gone my whole life, adolescent life to now, to YouTube University, okay? Now, what does that mean exactly? That means at that time, I was looking at videos every single day. I was watching political videos. I was watching apologetic videos. I was watching debate videos. So I was watching debate videos. I was watching apologetics. I was watching, oh gosh, I was watching TED Talks. I was watching everything you could get in the form of like organization and like how to be a better person and how to be a better student, how to be a better babysitter, how to be a better seller, how to be a better customer service rep, how to be a better communicator, how to be a better person. How especially to be a better photographer. And you know what I found out from YouTube University with the photography aspect is that this part, the photography part of YouTube, fucking sucks. And that's another thing I'll be changing. But that is my entrepreneurialship coming in, okay? All right? So as you can see right here, oh, by the way, I am 28 years old today. And my birthday is in October, when I will be 29. So we are nearing the 29 years age, and this is about to go kaput, okay? So I'm almost 30 years old at this point, and this is my education, and this is my credentials. So the only other thing I have in a form of education, and it's not only, right? I'm very proud of this, is photography specific education. So if you are in the photography world, you will know that there are many people who have made it on their own because a lot of schooling does not, including the community college I got, okay? So to back up a little bit, the community college, the classes I was taking were things like marketing. I was taking art classes with photography. I did film for a year, all these wonderful things. But the business side of it, I was taking accounting, I was taking economics. I was taking like business language and management classes, things like that. And while this was amazing, the photography aspect of it changes so quickly with social media now that community colleges are behind in this aspect of how to actually market yourself online properly because it changes so damn fast. And a lot of these professors did not grow up with the internet that are teaching these community colleges. No shade, I love all of the classes I took. I love all of my teachers. You guys did a great job. But this part of the photography aspect, I had to learn on my own when it came to marketing and sales online. And I am just learning to do it now because it is fucking confusing and there's so many ways to do it and it's very overwhelming. I did not grow up with a trust fund. I did not grow up with a knowledge that I would be able to afford college. I knew that I had to do it on my own. And I knew also from a young age that I wanted to be a photographer and that photography schools and art schools in general are, they're hard to afford. So this is my life so far, and this is my credentials, and we're gonna get more deep into it, especially with the YouTube University part, and I'll make that more clear about what I mean. But for now, this is me. So, love you guys. Stay curious. So, we're going to talk about upbringing. That is the first aspect. Oh my God. I got to rewrite it. I'm just going to write it in live. Okay. Now I know this doesn't work.